Welcome to Totally Talent Podcast by HR.com, your go-to source for all things talent. Whether you're looking for expert insights on high-volume hiring, the latest trends in recruitment technology, or strategies for building a winning team, we've got you covered. Join us for each episode as we dive deep into the challenges and opportunities shaping the talent landscape today. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Totally Talent. My name is Mike Wood. I'm the TA analyst and community leader here at HR.com. And I'm very excited because we are going to have a lively discussion with Mark Knowlton of TechScreen about IT hiring. Now, you hear lively discussion about IT hiring and you think that probably can't be true, but we are going to have a lively discussion because there's so much technology in the space now, but yet there's still so many of the same problems that we're still dealing with. So welcome, Mark. Would you mind just introducing yourself and telling people a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks so much. Well, I got into recruiting in 1996. Started with a staffing firm. Like a lot of people, it was just a career changer, and I knew nothing about IT. And I had the very good fortune of my next job. I actually got recruited into a high-end Microsoft solution provider where I was hiring the employees. And early on, I bring this candidate in. It was a C++ position. Now, the two owners were super technical. And I was horrified when I saw the admin escorting this candidate to the elevator after like 3 minutes. And I was like, oh my God. And I run to the CEO's office. I said, Frank, what happened? Did he swear? Did he take a swing at? Like, what happened? And so, and he looked at me, he had a very dry sense of humor. He just looked at me with this kind of side look. And he said, dude, if I interview one more person like that, I'm going to shoot you in the head. And I was like,
So it went
okay, well. I need to figure out some way to do some due diligence because this can't be a repeat. So I started sitting in the room with two middle tier developers we have who are just stone killers. And I'd sit there and I'd write down the questions as these guys would go Marcellus Wallace on these poor candidates. And but afterwards I would debrief. I said, okay, Dennis, Weston, what are the answers? And tell me, what does this tell us about their knowledge? Give me a context. If they don't know this answer, tell me how it relates to something they couldn't do that we would ask them to put, to produce a deliverable. And then I just made a nuisance of myself. I would ask guys to whiteboard stuff out. I read the white paper on C#. I read the white paper on Java. I would go to Microsoft Code Camp. And just over time, I just amassed my own library of technical knowledge and applied it to my day-to-day job. And so over time, I started seeing the real impact of being able to effectively filter and screen candidates to be presented to the manager. But the difference is I wanted to present evidence, all right? And so let me give you a good example of how that was applied to the real world. So I was consulting at a company called Pegasystems, and they had a lot of hires in their professional services, people who were being billed out for big bucks. And so they would have monthly interview days. So we'd have like up to 10 people fly them in, marathon interviews, make offers, and they had to start at a certain date. And so in 2009, I hired 80 full-time software engineers, and I did it on 117 submittals because I paired my interview down to 6 laser-focused questions. But the reason we had a 1.46 to 1 sub-to-star ratio is because I was presenting the evidence of why this candidate was worthy. It had nothing to do with the resume. In fact, I'll just finish with this one. But prior to that, working for an agency, had a major telco client, super high bar, and the manager had smug pride about how tough they were screening people out. I had a candidate apply for a job, hadn't coded in 4 years, and had a resume that said so. So I had the typical reactions like, oh, this poor guy, he missed the web. I said, wait a second. This guy sounds like one of our clients. So this guy took the time, he read a post, He applied. It's like, I'm going to call this guy. So I called him and I savagely went at him in C++. He did great. And so I was able to send the candidate over, but I wrote a little synopsis of our discussion. Started out with some softballs, access privilege. He did great. And then we got into function overloading, overriding. He did great. And then we got into memory management, where the manager really, that's the key. And I was able to finish my email saying, I'm convinced this guy is worth your time. He wound up getting hired. I got a $22,000 fee on a candidate any recruiter in their right mind wouldn't have called in 100 years. So what I learned is that in the absence of any other information provided by the static resume, that's all the manager is going to do. And so what I learned was the manager is unknowingly acting like Pavlov's dog. They see a series of buzzwords and they try to extract insight as to what it means and are they worth being on this short list, right? And I think you saw this. I actually did a poll on LinkedIn probably 2 weeks ago, and it was an open question to IT managers. It said, you're reviewing candidates to make your short list. How long do you read resumes? And everyone could know anecdotally it's not very long. But what the poll showed, 25% of the managers are reading the resume between 10 and 30 seconds. 50% are reading it under 10 seconds. How much insight could you be attempting to harvest from individual CVs if you are cutting and burning in under 10 seconds, right? It's not possible. And so I get passionate about that because by providing the right talent, because you actually have evidence of their worthiness, is the only fair way for both sides, for the candidate who actually has the skills, for this candidate who I saved from having to look for jobs at Home Depot, where actually he was in a production support role, so I shouldn't get over dramatic, but still he wasn't being hired as a coder. And the company is missing out on people who might otherwise have great skills. Like when I was at Akamai, very high bar, world-class engineers, and had a candidate who the manager was going to reject because he had published 14 papers on different subjects. He had a PhD in computer science, absolutely brilliant. But the manager was saying, oh, this guy's a PhD. He's just going to want to go to conferences and present papers. But I was able to overcome the manager's preconceived bias that this is just going to be a white paper warrior by saying, hey, listen, man, let me tell you what we talked about. You know, when we were discussing dynamic caching stuff way down in the weeds, was able to overcome that manager's biases. Not only did we hire the person, he wound up getting promoted twice and then was an engineering manager by the time I left. And so relying on buzzwords is selling everyone short, both the company who's missing out on talent, who's qualified, and the recruiters who just skip over them because they know no other way to present candidates. And the technology now is jumping in, and the ATSs are dinging people out from being, at the top of the list because they don't have the right buzzword. And so we want to help. Yeah, please. I'm sorry. I'm just running like a fire hose.
Yeah, no, it's great. So, no, I just want to jump in because it feels like that single point of failure is a problem throughout any business organization, no matter what the task that you do. So, like, if you have everything running through a single point of failure, then that's way too much on that one person. And if, we have ATS systems, we have the technology out there to parcel through these, but you still need that complete picture. You still need the soft skills. You still need to actually talk to the person to get a sense. And so it's funny that you have people just like sitting there looking at buzzwords when that's just kind of like, think of how much people read nowadays. Nobody reads anything. They just read the headlines.
Right.
And so it's like that's
or they get audiobooks. Have it ready.
Well, I was, yeah, I was an English major in college, which was a bad life decision. But I was an English major, and I had to do. I remember one semester, I was in like two different literature classes, and I had to read a book a week. And I'm like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to read, Pride and Prejudice and Life of Pi or something like that in 1 week. I got people to see. I'm in college. I got parties to go to, whatever. So I was looking for any type of shortcut, and I found Spark Notes, or just basically like the beginnings of Wikipedia at the time, where it's like somebody can like tell me the
Okay.
basics of it, and I don't get the nuance and stuff. Now, I did miss out with the nuance, but that's what everybody's doing with
Sure.
candidates now. They're just looking for the Cliff Notes version of the candidate to tell me whether I should hire them or not. And so now I do want to transition to you. You wrote a great blog
Yes.
post about the actual metrics in pushing a candidate through. If you want to talk through that with your great playing card deck analogy, because I love it.
Oh, right. So now we do a lot of work in the staffing world, and they track KPIs assiduously. In fact, there's an industry org called the Tech Serve Alliance, and I describe them as kind of like the Gartner group, but for IT and engineering hiring. And all of the members self-report on their KPIs that they track. How many meetings did the sales guys go to? How many submittals did they make? How many interviews and how many hires, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and I have a couple of these reports, and one of them, there was the average submittal to start was 11.5 to 1. And then in another year, it was 13 to 1. Now, just to give those numbers some context, I don't know the actual number of firms who participate, but let's say it's 450 because they have hundreds and hundreds of staffing clients. And let's say each of the firms only had 5 recruiters, not a big number. And we'll assume that they are actually submitting the number of candidates they expected, say 40 in a month, 2 a day. Well, if that's true, we are talking about, so 450 times 5 is 2250, each making 40 subs a month. That's 1,080,000 submittals in a year, a substantial number. Now, here's the problem. At 13 to 1, we're talking about a hit rate that's just under 8%. And so what happens is that the recruiters had to spend just as much time with the 12 that got overlooked as the person who actually got hired. And so these staffing firms paid recruiters to perform their primary function, qualify and submit candidates. But those efforts produce no revenue. And so think about this, a business model where the probability of success was in a dead heat with pulling an ace from a deck of cards. Let's build a business on that premise. How many cards in a deck? 52. What's 52 divided by 4? 13. So you're talking about hundreds of staffing firms all chasing a dollar, all making their best effort to find the right candidate. But because of this flawed process the managers use to rapid fire reject, because remember, most of them are going to give a 10-second or less scan. And so the result is that the staffing firms have to endure 90+% failure ratio on earnest, diligent efforts that went for naught because the manager was at ducks in a shooting gallery, bang, 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 to make their short list. And then why do you think staffing companies have 4 to 5% profit margins? Because only one thing can be true. Either those recruiters knowingly submitted 996,000 plus candidates they knew to be unqualified and just don't care about making commission, or the manager's resume shredding methodology completely undermined all their efforts. And the entire industry is predicated on this. It just boggles my mind. And I'm just recently discovered this. And it wasn't until that poll like we ran on LinkedIn where the light came on and said, oh my God, this is the single point of failure. Because no matter how much tech you use to filter in the candidates who apply for jobs and the ATS starts dinging people out because they don't have the right terms, this and that, all this dynamite high tech. Fast forward, now the manager has an attachment. And now we go to the the no tech manager reading resume. And the manager is looking at that resume. It's 2025. It may as well be 1985. And the manager's looking at someone who's a mainframer. They're using the same methodology. In fact, let me put some context in this. Do you know, Mike, who invented the resume?
Some horrible person, but I have no idea who it actually was.
No. It was Leonardo da Vinci in 1542.
Not a horrible person.
Leonardo da Vinci relied on wealthy patrons. And so when he would pitch, now you're a wealthy patron, I want to invent some great flying contraption, whatever. And so you rightfully asked me, so can you tell me more about some of the things you've done so I know my money's going to be well spent? And so what did Leonardo do? He, being a genius, he said, you know what? I'm going to make a listing of my various accomplishments so they can review them and see very quickly, wow, what an accomplished person. Look at all these amazing, miraculous things that this person created. I definitely want to support this person. And so what is a resume? A static document of historical, professional, educational accomplishments, period. And the review of the resume really hasn't changed. And that's why we're so excited that our tool actually is inserted into the process that doesn't change the workflow. We've just figured out how to extract relevant and critical information about the candidate's competence and serve it to the manager. Now, the manager can still take the 10 to 30 seconds to review the candidate, but if they were reviewing an analysis of how effectively this candidate explained how garbage collection worked in Java and did it in 30 seconds, that manager has everything they need to know as to whether this one makes the shortlist. And that's all that matters. Because once they get them in the formal process, in front of a team, in front of a whiteboard, they're going to hire the person who does the best. It's getting the funnel down to the right people for the right reasons.
Yeah, so let's just take a step back just so our audience knows exactly what text screen does. You provide an assessment of the candidate, a little short list, Cliff Notes version essentially to the manager, right? And help get them know exactly who to talk to.
That's exactly right. So so we built a SaaS platform that has libraries of technical skills, questions with answers. And historically, what I wanted to do was replicate what I had built over time as a consultant, be able to ask relevant technical questions and get real answers to suggest worthiness for the manager to formally consider them. Now, in the past, the recruiter was on the hook. We had the questions and answers on the screen and they'd listen to the answers and they'd just check off when they heard, oh, they just said polymorphism, they said the JVM, whatever. But now with our AI Verify, what we do is we're able to take the recording, turn it into a transcript, and then it compares a transcript against a curated database of concrete truth about Java or C++ or Python or what have you. And so the manager is reading an analysis of how effectively the candidate presented their answer. So now the manager can still follow the same process, but instead of using the resume as the one and only bit of evidence as to, is this person worth my time on a phone? They can actually extract insight from how they articulate their answer. And what's really cool about our AI is it's not completely binary, meaning like there's a question in Java, what's a class loader? And give me examples of what the class loaders are. There's 4 of them. And we had a candidate who, said, there's Extension Bootstrap, plugin and system. And this candidate said application. But our AI acted just like a manager did. They said, okay, they said extension bootstrap application, but they were thinking system. So I'm going to give them credit. So
Good.
AI Verify actually appropriately gave the candidate credit the way a manager would, because that's what a manager would do in a real conversation. And so the thing I really love about this is that not only does it provide the recruiter with the short list of evidence-based submittals, think of the experiential learning that they're going through. What do you think is going to happen if a recruiter asks 20 different Java developers to explain garbage collection? They're going to get 20 different versions, but they're going to be able to start understanding context. Some people are going to give bare bones answers. It's a way to automate memory management. Then you're going to get some other people who go into elaborate detail, like I'm prone to do. Like I compare it to how an air traffic controller controls activity in an airport. You know, a plane's like an object, fuel's like memory. A reference of the radio signal of the plane is like a reference to an object. And so the recruiters are going to be immersed in this technical discussion. The knowledge absorption by osmosis they're going to receive simply by executing the job using our tool is going to be absolutely priceless. And the credibility they're going to inherit by starting to ask their questions. And what happens over time, Mike, they're going to develop something that I call conversational competence. And so by actually having a useful understanding of some of the moving parts, they can start having better, more engaging conversations. But the AI is going to write the report for them, for the manager. So I think it's just it sits in a unique niche that helps bridge the gap between the vast ocean of people out there and the short list of people who actually are worth the time of the company and the hiring manager.
Now, I love that, because if you know a lot of technical people, or at least the people that I know, and I'll kind of overgeneralize a little bit, but a lot of them are not the best communicators. They're not extroverts or whatever, or they're just very much, they're very good at that language of a programmer or something like that. And so if I were to interview them,
Give me a minute. Really?
Yeah.
Extroverts?
Yeah. So if the manager is more of a people person type of thing, like there's different types of intelligence, but in that field, you're finding people that are very technical people, and they may not be able to put that into the right words on a resume or give the best interview, because they're really technical people. They're used to dealing with systems, not with people. And so anything that helps bring the candidate to life a little bit, beyond what they can put in their resume, like when I've applied to jobs in the past and whatnot, if I give somebody a resume, that's not me. Like, I'd rather talk to somebody
Right.
and talk about my descriptions, because if I just put it on a piece of paper, that doesn't really give you a sense of who the person is and what they can really do. And a lot of us grow up where we're supposed to be humble. We're not very good at patting ourselves on the back and what we're good at. So, help the candidates get the skills that they want to portray on their resume without even having to write it down. So I just love that.
Oh, that is so true. In fact, to hear that point, I have spoken to candidates who I would learn knew a certain technology that's not listed. They said, could you explain why you didn't put this on? And the person said something to the effects like, unless I consider myself an absolute expert on something, I'm not going to list it. Well, you don't have to be an expert in everything, but if that becomes a factor that DQs you in the eyes of the rapid fire read manager, what was your upside? I mean, modesty is a good thing, but don't cut yourself off the knees.
Yeah, well, it's why are we playing gotcha constantly with candidates? Like, oh, you didn't put this particular thing in your resume. Haha, you're out of the thing. But like, nobody tells people how to write a resume. Nobody tells people exactly what they're worth. There's like this guessing game. I feel like so one of my first jobs, I remember as it was at a PR agency. I just finished grad school. I'd spent all that money for grad school, and they're like, "Now, Mike, we're gonna offer you this job." It was 30 grand, and I'm like, I have no idea what 30 grand is. My first job. Now I know today that that is nothing, but I'm like, okay, 30 grand, that sounds great. And I'm like, oh, but I have a master's. And they're like, okay, well, you have a master's, we'll give you 31. And I think that's great. Meanwhile, I work for 6 months and I find out that someone else without a master's goes in there, it gets the same exact job for like 5 grand more. And so like
Oh
now I'm
man.
pissed. Now I'm pissed. And I'm like, why are they do like so like why are we jerking around candidates like this when we don't need to. It's just this like weird it's like Pawn Stars. Like I go into the Pawn Stars place and I'm like, I have this $20 bill. What can you give me for it? And they're like, well, I have to keep it on the
Yep.
shelf, and I'll give you $4. Okay, great.
Right.
Well, I mean, so I think your tool is helping the candidate not discount themselves.
Absolutely right. That's absolutely right, because there's 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 no way to miss technical competence and insight when they're describing something that they understand well. And it doesn't matter what the resume says about what they understand about the runtime environment. I always default to Java; it's my favorite language. But it tells you so much information about what they know, that's all that really matters. Because at the end of the day, companies are going to make offers to the people who perform best in their interview environment with their team. It's not all about knowledge. It's about, is this person going to get along with the team? Can they roll with the punches? Do they insist on, we got to redo all the documentation because this specs, can you play well in this environment? And do you know enough to carry your weight? But the processes and technologies that lead up to the formal interview process, they're so broken and so dependent upon, and I think increasingly be dependent upon, let technology make these decisions that identify someone as being worthy for going forward. And I always bristle when people suggest that, is AI going to replace recruiters? And I say, absolutely not. Never. Can't happen. It cannot happen. And anyone who's trying to build technology for the purpose of eliminating the human factor is just so dead wrong. They're trying to see the universe, but they do it by putting up themselves in front of a brick wall. And people have to be the arbiters on, how companies decide who to hire. And our objective with AI Verify is to empower the recruiter to have peer level conversations. But because I don't want the recruiters, because no one is as rock stupid and mule stubborn as me to take 20 years of my life to painfully acquire technical knowledge by the eyedropper full. I mean, if I could show you some of the IM threads I had with my buddies, from JBoss and the guy who wrote TurboTax, going back and forth in low-level minutia that would make most people have a migraine. Like, I went through all that pain that led to a game-changing technology that's going to empower recruiters to inherit this superpower of being able to screen like they were a dev manager and write the report, so the manager can actually read something for 30 seconds and make their decision. But to help companies make better decisions, maintaining their process, empower the recruiter, but not have it be uncomfortable for the candidate as well, because the coding exercises. In fact, I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend HR West that just happened.
Yeah.
But I didn't tell you this. I was at last year's HR West, and I was talking to a competitor who had another interview platform. And this person told me they had research that 70%, and this was the Bay Area, but 70% of the candidates who were presented a link to a coding exercise ghosted themselves. They just, not only did they refuse to take the coding exercise, they just withdrew from the process and became a ghost. So what's the value of a tool meant to extract insight about the candidate's knowledge if the tool itself scares away a majority of the people you would like
Yeah.
to take it? And that also cuts the recruiter out of the process. What value is the recruiter getting for having sent a link to a coding exercise, even if the candidate takes it? Do they do it in a timely fashion? Do they do it legitimately and not cheat and just copy and paste? The recruiter is removed from the process. It's almost like, okay, just like we pat them on the head, go sit down in the chair in the corner while the grown-ups talk, and we'll let this engineer do a coding exercise that the manager created. And like, I actually consulted for a major company. I won't use their name. They insist on 3 hacker ranks per candidate. And when I was consulting with them, I said, this is madness. Do you know how many good people you're just going to scare away? And you're just going to not even consider, because I have 3 offers at my price. Why am I getting 3 coding exercises? Have a nice day. I'm not doing that. And so
No.
our tool helps solve both problems. The recruiter gets to engage at an engineering manager level. They don't need to have the knowledge. The tool does the heavy lifting in parsing their answers. Then the manager gets to stick to their 10 to 30 second read, except now they're reading about how the candidate can explain how DNS helps you find a website. Because like I had a manager who, that was the only question he asked. Explain how DNS works, go. And you could just go as minimal or as, deep down to the weeds you could, but this manager got everything he needed to know out of how someone described DNS. And he was comfortable in picking them based on that. So our tool makes both sides happy because the process stays the same. The recruiter's empowered, that we extract the information in a non-offensive way to the candidate, because the candidate, they're just having a collegial conversation. This is cool. I had this recruiter asking me about, our DevOps process. Oh my God, it was a great conversation. I didn't expect a recruiter to ask me questions like that. Then the manager gets to read the abridged version of the conversation. It's like, okay, wow, here are the 5 guys I want to talk to. Boom, done. Process didn't change, except the extraction process was turned on its head, because now AI does all the heavy lifting, and I think it's the best of both worlds. And so that's why I'm so passionate, because I finally figured out a way to replicate my mutant personage.
No, it's great because, like, in recruiting, we've gone back and forth from it used to be it's too hard to apply. It's too hard. Like, the barrier to apply is too bad. Now, with, like, you
Yes.
look at, like, LinkedIn Easy Apply, now it's too easy to apply. And so we keep going back
Yep.
and forth. We're speaking out of both sides of our mouth. And so we need to find that happy medium. Like, and it's going to
Yep.
only help the candidates in the long run, because I mean, if I'm applying to a job and I go on LinkedIn and it says right on the top, 3,000 people already applied to this. What's the point? Why am I going to go through that process? Or if I start interviewing
Yep.
at a company, and I know some companies are like this, where it's like 7 interview rounds. If you are going through 7 interview rounds before making a decision, imagine what working there is going to be like. It's just
Oh, I
incapable of
know it.
making a decision. So,
Absolutely.
like, it's just, and you get this. I mean, I'm in my 40s now, and you get this with age and stuff. You realize, okay, that doesn't make sense and whatnot. But um, just you're helping candidates from being burned out on all the assessments that they're doing. So I love it. Can you
Absolutely.
just so we're running up on time here, but I want people to know how to
Yep.
find you, how to find Tech Screen. Where can we go?
Yep. Well, I mean, techscreen.com. We're actually dealing with the website nav button problem, to, the menu that opens up the rest of the site. But
You should hire a developer.
and then obviously, yeah, yeah, I'm going through this right now, but I'm going. But my LinkedIn profile is, feel free to reach out to me, and I try to make pretty frequent posts talking about subjects like this. But my passion is for helping facilitate companies to hire effectively at a good pace. Like, many years ago, Josh Burson had, Forbes did an article that talked about how the U.S. economy burns $160 billion a year because of empty seats. And it was partially based on research done by then Burson by Deloitte. They figured out the cost of an empty seat at a company on average is about $1,000 a day, right? And so because IT hiring takes longer because of the complexity of the resumes, et cetera, the amount of business impact to companies who are ineffective at hiring is massive. $160 billion is real money. And so if you can close the window of how long it takes to put someone in a seat whose productivity is dependent upon, because the productivity time value in a software shop is massive. It's hundreds of dollars an hour, despite the $1.25 or $1.50 they're being paid as a base. Their worth of the company is considerably more. And all that productivity gets burned when there's an empty seat. And so having the approach to quickly identify people is going to help companies be so much more effective and productive and be able to hit their goals. Because you know what happens if a publicly traded company misses a shipping date on a really, big time product that's now late? They're going to pay for it. And so I just see the incredible importance of helping companies effectively hire quickly with the right people, because you understand and have a process to extract the relevant information that lets a manager make that rubber hits the road decision to get the right people in front of them to pull the trigger on the one candidate they need to hire.
Well, this is fantastic. Thank you, Mark, for a wonderful interview. Friends out there of the podcast, I'm going to be sharing a lot of Mark's rants, hopefully in the near future, because I love the analogies and I love the passion for cutting through the BS that we were putting candidates through. So thank you, Mark, and you have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks so much, Mike. I look forward to our discussions in the future.
Thanks for tuning in to the Totally Talent podcast by HR.com. We hope you find today's episode insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to explore more episodes and discover valuable resources at hr.com/podcasts, where you can listen to all of our podcasts. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and making a difference in the world of talent.